Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
They're polite. I mean, they just take the time for you.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
I like the Angels for what they've done for me.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to our Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the behind-the-camera producer, Jeff Durall, for our series of Community Connection. We're at Fort Hays State University on the campus in the Memorial Union, in the main lobby of the Union, with Joel Dugan, Assistant Professor of Art and Design at Fort Hays State University, our Community Connection. Back in the fall of 2015, Joel and some students took a trip to Kansas City, and from that came some early seeds of the development of the Fort Hays State University historical murals, 3 of which are now on display at the Memorial Union on the campus of Fort Hays State University. And Joel, let's start from that point. How did this project develop?
So to give you a little bit of a kind of review of the history of this project, it actually developed with my students and I standing inside of a Thomas Hart Benton retrospective that was taking place at the Nelson Atkins Museum. What they had done is they were reviewing the history of Thomas Hart Benton's work in relationship to the movie industry, looking at the growth and the development that took place from that experience of his. And so as I'm inside that room with the students and they're standing in front of these very large paintings, they're asking me the same questions that maybe you had asked me earlier, was how do you even start? Where does this begin? How does this cultivate as an idea, as a project, as a drawing, and as a piece? And so the students and I, as we started to engage, were driving home, and they are just so invigorated with this energy. And I decided that I was going to try to cultivate a project for them on campus that had the same practicum experience that I continue to try to bring into the classroom, and that is that we're actually practicing real-world, minded projects inside of the university system. And so our first discussion was, where did it all begin? How did we first get here? And when you look at Hayes, obviously you think a lot about the formidable force of that outpost, of being this Western kind of stand between where civilization had pushed forth to, and then the great expansive West. And so for me, that became something that was indicative of this first panel that you'll see in the mural that becomes the one with the buffalo and the sunset and the fort. That's kind of the origins in my mind of what I've learned to understand Western Kansas.
And that's what you'd like the eye to begin with, is the panel that's on the left when you come into the main entrance of the Memorial Union, a starting point for the project, if you will.
Correct. In a very traditional Western way of reading, I would like the viewer to read it from left to right, so that you see the visual progression that's taking place match that of a timeline of the history of the the region itself. So yes, I would like you to start on the left and then transition across. Obviously, I think that there are icons that are reminiscent for all of us to this campus, this school, and so I never want to quite guide someone too much as to the way I expect them to interact with the piece. So
now, about the university's involvement, after you had determined that there were student involvement, when you can involve your students in art and design with this project, you go to the university, what happens then?
Well, I will say this isn't the first time I've gone to the university. It is the first time I've gone to the university under the leadership of Dr. Mirta Martin. And it was a real short conversation. I brought the idea up to her, and she looked at me and said, "What do we do to get it started?"
Obviously, she didn't say no in that short conversation.
No, she did not say no. She said, "What do I do to get it started?" And I explained to her that I wasn't expecting anything particular in terms of pay. I needed a room to actually hold the execution in, and then I actually needed a little bit of money for supplies. And we discussed how to do that and how to fund it. And the room was there the next day. And so construction and development began the very next week. And I think what it allowed me to do was show the students how much faith I had in them and had in myself, that we together could combine forces to create something long lasting. And to come back with that energy created a lot of encouragement and excitement in them. And so, yeah, it ended up to be a wonderful project for us. And I can't say enough about the students that helped me. They are already actually starting their own project here in town that they're about halfway through. And a lot of them are seeking out projects like this for themselves now. So it's always an encouraging thing to see.
Can you give us a little tease of where that project might be or what it might be so we can look forward to it, Joel?
So right now they are down at what used to be the old Washington Elementary, what is now Early Childhood Connections. They are in that space, and their idea was they had moved into the location, and when moving into it, it felt very stark and like an old school building, felt a little institutionalized. And so they wanted to create a space for younger patrons, and they wanted it to be something that was a little bit more, well, kind of home-like. So my students had come up with a design where they basically redesigned the facade of the front of every room as if it would be the front of a building or a home. And so they put a roof gable that actually came off the front above the doors, and then the students blended that into the environment. And so all of the walls are painted right now through 2/3 of the facility. We fundraised all of the monies to actually do the project, and they've been doing a fabulous job. And so they did document it in the Hayes Daily News, and then there's some follow-up to come still.
Well, we're going to be visiting with the Early Childhood Connections later on this fall as school starts again, so we're definitely going to want to check the work that your students have been doing.
Yes.
Now, how was it determined, Joel, that the Memorial Union was going to be the location of the murals?
Well, in that conversation that I had with Dr. Martin was the discussion as to like where is the desired location. And we had at one time 3 locations in mind that could be chosen from. And really the thing I think that led us to this decision was, you know, Dr. Martin does a lot of work in Topeka and was able to stand in that rotunda there at the State Capitol building and see those John Stewart Curry murals. And obviously the regionalists have been really influential upon myself, and so she said how amazing it was to stand there and turn and in a circular fashion see the history of the state. And so we decided that the Union was probably the best area for that. And you know, maybe to talk a little bit about personal experience, I was fortunate enough to attend Indiana University for my master's, and they have the Thomas Hart Benton murals there that at one time had been made for the Indiana State Fair. And there is something amazing to attend a university that has so much history and so much legacy adorned in their walls. And so that was something we really wanted to bring to this space. We talked about how the space was impressive and you got inside, but it really yearned for more color on the walls, and you know, there could be a longer legacy, I guess. And so these serve as a great opportunity for us to try to weave together, you know, the past and in a way still allow well, space for the present. So
University Relations, a news release said that this was about a 300-hour project over a span of 9 months for the initial 3 mural panels. So quite an impressive project. But you were able to draw from a lot of different sources for the inspiration for these. Talk about some of those sources that you were able to draw from.
Well, obviously, probably one of the most tangible for this region would be some of the WPA murals that you see inside of many of the post offices throughout this region. And then, for myself, again, thinking about my history, my undergrad was spent both in Chicago and in Detroit, and both of those cities are laden with examples of murals from that recession era. And so I had the opportunity to see the Diego Rivera industry murals that were inside the Detroit Institute of the Arts, and it would be something that when I was at a loss for what to do in my coursework, I would go over to the museum and sit in front of that Diego Rivera piece and just kind of study its narrative, because it had a beautiful narrative. And so I thought about that a lot, and we, as the students and I continued to develop sketches for the pieces, we did talk a lot about the idea of looking at kind of the legacy of those artists and seeing how they told stories and where their narrative started. And so that's a huge part of the background of them. Obviously, there is something wonderful about the Kansas sky, and you cannot shrink its presence in any of these murals. So that might be the difference, is that a lot of those murals are an interior scene or have shallow space. And I really wanted to extend the horizon in these pieces. So.
And we're going to talk about that sky in our next segment. But I wanted to ask too, because you mentioned that you had input from people who visited, telling you stories and sharing memories of certain parts of the mural.
Oh, I did. I had a lot of local community members that would stop by, as well as artists. I had the ability to have Pete Felton stop by and kind of respond and talk a little bit about authenticity of the piece. And what it helped to do was fill in gaps for me as to the visual accuracy for the train station, which becomes the third of this triptych here of the first half of the mural. And just being able to hear some people's recollections for simple things like, if you'll notice in the train station mural, there's a green cart. Right? I did not know at first, when I had seen the black and white image, I thought, oh, it's just another carriage, it must be wood. Right? Those were post office carts. And those post office carts were particularly painted green in order for them to be easily recognizable. And at the time that those were painted green, that's circa 1925, we're transitioning now. These carts are not just moving mail, but they're moving people. So people that are ill or might need some assistance, they're starting to use that as kind of what we know today to be an ambulance. And so conversations like that really help. Now, I did have to go back and alter things. So there was a lot of alterations that took place in that piece. But some of that's because we were working from images from the other side of the station or parallel to the station, and they were all black and white. So, yeah, the piece itself, quite satisfied with the way it came out. I'm right now in the process of sketching out the final rendering of the next 3 panels that will document the student body and the university experience here and now as we know it, and then the transition on to graduate and alumni and community members. So it's going to talk about the umbrella of the university and how that transition takes place, and really the transformation of becoming a graduate. So.
Specifically about the murals and the panels themselves, with some of the specifics with Joel Dugan, Assistant Professor of Art and Design at Fort Hays State University, when our Community Connection continues.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hays and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
And the Angel Care nurse comes to see me once a week.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Angel Care has helped to stay home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Welcome back to our Community Connection. Our connection today is with Joel Dugan, Assistant Professor of Art and Design at Fort Hays State University. We're in the Memorial Union, the main lobby, as we visit with Joel about the mural project and the history of Fort Hays State University. And let's begin with the focus on the left mural to begin with, which is where you'd like for us to start this progression, Joel. And the thing that jumps out is that beautiful Kansas sky that you've created.
Yeah, I was trying to capture that sky at, sunset, and so obviously the road and the alignment of the forms all kind of position you in a triangular way back towards the fort, what we know to be a historic Fort Hays. And then as you come upon even the trees that shield the kind of horizon, they are basking this glowing orange light in a way to kind of create mystery and suspense for what is over that kind of horizon line. And so that becomes a big part for me of the presence of looking towards the western sky on the high plains. Is I guess as I was coming to Kansas, I thought quite specifically about Lewis and Clark and some of these other pioneers that have pushed forth out this way, and what this land must have looked like when no one occupied the plains other than the Native Americans. And so I want there to be really the colors and the movement creates a turmoil where the viewer's not sure if they're basking in the success of their travels, or if it's a formidable fear that's over that horizon. So I do want it to be very suspenseful, in many ways wrap up that feeling that I first had as I embarked upon Hays as a city and Fort Hays as an institution.
One of the things I enjoyed, Joel, was the dimension you put with the wagon. The beauty of your work as an artist, from my standpoint of enjoying it, is the almost three-dimensional look that you were able to put with that wagon, the larger part closer to us and such. It's astounding, the creativity, the beauty of that. It's amazing. One thing about the fort that we wanted to mention, and of course the buffalo is there, the fort itself, the structure, would not have had the roof, so a little artist license there perhaps?
Yeah, it would not have had the roof, and that's something that obviously has been put on to maintain the building. Yeah, there are a couple things in each one of the murals, and that one particular, I guess, one of the other things too, and I had only been exposed to this from some of the instructors that had come over from the applied tech, is that if that is supposed to be indicative of 1905 or 1900s, I guess at the most, there wouldn't be a paved path.
Oh, dirt.
It would have been dirt or rubble. So there are some of those things that take place that many ways, we'll refer to them as artistic license.
You're
is the best
entitled.
way. Yeah.
All right, let's move to the center panel, which obviously is the beginnings of Fort Hays State with Pick and Haul depiction.
Yeah, that is, the center panel is really the depiction of the footprint of the university. And so it's talking about the standalone building that housed the entire university, and it is what we understand to be Pick and Haul, and one of those most recognizable facades with those large pillars and kind of that little square on the roof. And yeah, for me, I really wanted to stretch the expanse of the outside of the composition, almost fisheye lens it so that it forced you down that path into the middle. And my view was, since that's the one you will walk underneath, that I wanted there to be a notion that as someone stopped and looked up and found themselves at the forefront of that painting, that they could kind of centralize their vision onto that one shadowed silhouette of a figure walking. And my kind of concept behind that was that after you walk through that pillar or under that archway, from that point forth, you now embody the presence of that figure in front of that building. And so it was a transition that was taking place as an incoming student is embodying, a contemporary academic. And so I know that as they take their admission tour, they're probably going to access that side of the building and walk up those stairs. And hopefully that creates a little bit of a nostalgic history for them.
So that figure isn't necessarily representative of a specific individual, but just kind of a concept.
Yeah, it's a concept of the constant. It's the constant that it's the presence always for the new youth, the next generation. It's kind of that idea that Dr. Martin talks about herself, and this notion of make sure that when you reach the penthouse that you always send down the elevator for the next occupant. And I think that that's what's beautiful, I guess, about higher ed, is that it is a cyclical trend. And in many ways, we're always trying to keep our awareness on the present, and prosperous kind of faith of youth, like youth and energy. And
Moving to the third panel with Joel. This is a panel that Ellen Veed, who was a math professor from 1960 to 1998, a retired professor of mathematics, commented on the train station, the color that it brought to the Union, the brightness of the piece itself. And the story, according to the University Relations news release, was that Ellen Veed came to Fort Hays State on the train, stopping at that train station. That was her introduction to Fort Hays State.
Oh, I wish I would have had an opportunity to hear that from Ellen herself, but it's wonderful knowing that that was her recollection. She's able to adorn it with some of her memories. Obviously, my engagement with it has been from a voyeuristic standpoint, looking at black and white photos because it doesn't exist anymore. To my knowledge, I think that the train station was removed in about 1978 to 1980, somewhere in that
Probably,
span of
yeah.
time. Its footprint is still clear right now and is used for parking for students just off of campus, but by looking at some of those images and talking to some of the patrons that might have seen it as a child or have looked at some family photos, I think that I did justice to reassembling it. And definitely my idea was this is a train coming that's waiting to be unloaded. And so it's a slowing train coming to a station.
Now there's a figure in that overall presentation, really one of the, other than the silhouette feature in front of Picken, that actually involves people in this particular instance. And one of those figures, I understand, has a kind of a history with one of the Dugan children.
Oh yes, my son is in the painting.
Tell us that story.
He is my children are 4 and 6, and they are quite comfortable with giving their opinion on things, and so.
And beginning artists themselves, I understand.
Yes, they are budding artists themselves, and they came into the studio and they would always visit and drop me off lunch while we were painting the mural. And my son told me a couple things, but there were 2 instances in that painting where he felt like they were wrong. One was the fact that there were no boys in it, and there would be little boys because they'd be helping. And he just said they usually always go to work with Dad, whether they choose to or not, which I guess that labor would be very reminiscent of that time. And
what
that
an insight
era.
for a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so I had him stop in front of the mural, put on a little hat I had, and hold essentially what would be a little bit of rope as if he was tying up a satchel or a bundle. And so I did that for him, and then maybe the other section was he grabbed a brush with red paint and put a spot on that bottom right-hand side, which then became this red lantern. He just said, you need some color right here. Dad, it has to have it.
What a legacy that will be for that young man. That is an amazing story. Now let's move, if we could, to the other coming murals, one of which is going to be introduced, I believe, at Homecoming. How's that one coming along?
Yeah, so that one right now has just the base values put onto the panel. We've finished that sketch, and I guess your comment a second ago that the panels are starting to become more occupied by figures will become very, very evident in this next set of 3, and that is that they are going to be predominantly figures, predominantly figurative in representation. And so the center one will talk about the establishment of the seal. And so I am actually trying to get Pete Felton to be one of the models inside of the piece. And
any success so far?
Well, I think it takes a little bit of courting. So I'm courting.
Stay after him.
Yeah, I'm courting. I'm courting him.
Good.
But I'd like to have someone putting the finishing touches on carving a relief of the seal, along with some other figures off to the side that are helping to give the artist some tools and/or to show some young students the presence of academic, in a way, I guess I would just say research. So that's the center panel come up during Homecoming, and then the next 2 that flank the sides, we'll talk a little bit about the umbrella of the university and the transformation that takes place as one becomes a student and then graduates and becomes a community member.
In the Union, then, where will that placement take place, Joel? Has that been planned? Is it determined already?
It will be in the same room, and it will be on the walls that are just adjacent on the south side. So it will go, it'll flank either side, and the middle one will go right in the middle. You will essentially then, when you enter the side of the Union, you will enter a rotunda or half a rotunda of paintings adorning the history of the university. So,
wow. Finally, I wanted to share with you, you may or may not be aware of this, but this is a quote from President Myrta Martin at Fort Hays State University. Fort Hays State is most fortunate to be able to attract such incredibly talented people. We see them throughout our faculty, our staff, our community. Joel Dugan is one of those people. His talent transformed a plain canvas and made it come alive with our history. These murals will adorn the walls of our Union, and they will bear testimony to our journey. From President Myrta Martin.
And I can't say enough about having someone have utter confidence in how those crazy ideas can be cultivated into, I guess, legacy pieces for us all. She was very supportive from the very establishment of this project, and so that's very kind of her to say, but she had a big part in it too. So.
We are very fortunate as viewers to be able to see and to experience the kind of artistic creativity that people like Joel Dugan at Fort Hays State University bring to our enjoyment. Assistant Professor of Art and Design at Fort Hays State, Joel Dugan, our community connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hays and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
And the Angel Care nurse comes to see me once a week.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Angel Care has helped to stay home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.